Hi, welcome back to the Backpacker Coach. Today we have another special episode of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, the girls missing from Panama. So I want to go over some very interesting things that have come up about the night photos. I have done also some tests, but there have been some new things that the Imperfect Plan has come up with, and we definitely need to go over those things. And there's just a lot of interesting things to go over with the night photos. So we're going to probably break this up into probably 2 or 3 segments, otherwise it'd be very long, and I know that we don't like to watch long videos. So we're going to break this up, but I want to get into our first section where it's going to be some of the tests that I've done and with the camera that the girls used, and to just kind of go over what's maybe possible with the camera and a few other things. And then we'll get deeper and deeper into the night photos of seeing what information has come up and just kind of go over some of those fun things. So there's just a lot of information that has not been talked about and some interesting, I guess you want to call it, theories. So let's get into it. All right, I wanted to show you what we have here first. This is a representation of every photo that was on the camera from the girls' trip, all the way from the first picture they took at the airport all the way to the last picture at the very end of the night photos. And then they're kind of broken up into segments. Those are the first 4 pictures that they published or somebody leaked, whichever you want to believe. And then there's a large amount of pictures that have never been ever published. We don't know what they are. Then there's the next segment, this gray area. And this area, some of the pictures were published. That's when they went to the beach and some of the other things that they did. And there are more photos that were published, but I don't know what the numbers are. So I didn't put them in because I don't know what the numbers are. They erased all the numbers and changed the names and all that stuff. So I didn't put those in just because I don't know what the numbers are. But these are the ones that we know the numbers are. And of course, it's very possible that other ones could have been changed, just like we had with the hike. It's possible that the other ones could have been changed too, so I wouldn't trust them 100%. But that's what we have, at least for the information that we have. So this gray area is the kind of before they got to Phuket, when they were at the beach and did some other sightseeing and some other things. This green area here is just the couple days prior to the hike. So it's when they just got to Phuket and they walked around Phuket and they had, lunches and went to the couple other areas. And then the pink area here, that is the hike. That is the photos that they published or were leaked. All right. And then this dark gray area, that is the night photos. So that's the first part that I want to show you. So if you look at all of the photos, they took 444 photos altogether. Or if you want to look at, they took 343 photos, would have been normal pictures, I guess. And you can say that the night photos were not normal photos. So that's the first thing that we needed to look at, was battery life. Battery life is very important. The first thing when I saw all this information together like this is, can the camera battery handle that many pictures? Is it possible? And so looking at this first, I thought, all right, so can the camera battery handle 100 flash photos, as well as can it do 343 normal photos? Or could it do 444 photos without ever changing the battery? So the first thing I looked at was the instruction book, and I wanted to see what it said there. Okay, so the first part I wanted to look at was the instruction book. The instruction book said that this camera could take approximately 210 photos before the battery would run out. So I thought, great, all I have to do is go back and look to see how many photos, the girls took. So let's go back here, say 210 photos. Here's 210. So my first thought was, all right, great. So somewhere in here, they would have had to change the battery or charge it, right? That's what we would have thought. I thought, so that would possibly explain why some of the images down here have the wrong date and time. Now, here's a good question. I especially want to ask this to the imperfect plan people or anybody who has any of the other pictures, because nobody's answering this question. Nobody. And guess what? If somebody would answer this question, this would clear up 1,000 different questions. So we all know that these images down here had some problems with the date and time and stuff. But nobody will say whether these pictures up here had wrong date and wrong time. So why is that important? So if these images up here had the wrong date as well as the wrong time throughout the whole thing, then you just know that somebody just made a mistake at the beginning. They just didn't pay attention, and they just messed up. No big deal, because we would know, obviously, a ton of these pictures unequivocally are real pictures. Obviously, plenty of them are. So we would know for sure there's no problem with those. But if somewhere in here these are normal, and these ones down here, if they have wrong date and wrong time, that means somewhere in there somebody had to change the battery and had to change the date on the camera. But nobody will say that. Nobody will say what is going on there. That is a very, very, very important part of this case, and nobody will say it. I don't know why, because that's extremely important. So if anybody out there has the original or has access to the other images up here, can you tell me whether those images have the same problem with the date and time being wrong? So that's a question I put out there to the internet. All right. So that's the first part. So the next part is I wanted to actually test the camera to see whether or not this is even possible. Can you get, 200 pictures, 400 pictures, 1,000 pictures? I didn't know. So the next part we're going to go over is some of the tests that I did, and we're going to see how many photos I was able to take, and we're going to see is this possible to do in one shot without ever changing the battery. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So let's look at some of the information that I have that when I did the tests to the camera. All right, the first test, I wanted to see how many photos I would take if I just took normal photos. How long would the battery last? And I did this actually over a period of actually like 3 months. So you can see why it took so long to do a part of this video, just because I did it for I did this for a very long time, not just a very, like one day just pressing the button 5 billion times. So what I did is I actually took about 12 pictures with full flash in total pitch darkness. And then after that, I would go out in the backyard and I would take, a multiple of pictures, maybe 10, 20 pictures every single day. And I did that every day. I even took it on one of our vacations. I took it on, I went to the beach on our vacation. I took it on another part of that vacation. I took it on a walk I did, taking all kinds of different pictures of animals and different things. And then after that, I just continued to do that through until the camera died. And you know what? How many pictures I was able to take? I was able to take 889 photos like that over like a 3-month period. Let's see, look at the first date here. First one was taken 5/28/23. And the last one was taken 7/19/2023. So you can see is a good span of time that, and I didn't charge the battery or anything like that. I just went until the camera wouldn't turn on anymore. So that is very interesting. I was able to do pretty much like twice this with not ever changing the battery. So that tells me something interesting already. But there is another slight issue. So we have the last night photos, and running a flash, we know obviously takes more than just taking a photo. So that's the first problem. The second problem, though, is that it's very difficult to reproduce, is that the night photos had problems. And what I mean by that is that the flash was not firing at full potential, at like 100%. It was firing like, say, 50% kind of. And I can show you what I mean by that. Let me show you what I mean here. So I took some photos at night with this camera, lightly raining, and this first one, the camera was set at ISO 80, and the exposure was, the shutter speed was 1/60th of a second, and the f-stop's 3.5. Okay, with the flash going off full, which is not what normally the camera will do. It normally does not do that. The next one, I set the ISO at 100, and the f-stop, of course, is at 3.5. And what was the shutter speed at? 1/60th. Okay, so I changed the ISO pretty much. Okay, so that's this image. Then I did an image of just the camera on auto, what the camera normally would do at night. And you can see what the camera normally would do is the shutter speed was at 1/15th of a second, the f-stop still normally 3.5, and the ISO is at 400. So that's what it normally should look like when you're like underneath a set of trees. See how nice and bright those trees are, and they're way up there. They're like 20-30 feet up in the sky, and you can also see all the raindrops, all that kind of stuff. But you then look at the actual photos of the girls. It's very dark. Once again, dark. It's just very dark. It's not well lit. Once again, very dark, not well lit. And these ones are, these photos were not lightened in Photoshop. They're actually what would come out of the camera. They were not lightened like some of the other ones. So if you take a look here at what does this camera or this photo look like when it's dark, looks a little closer to this one, which it's darker, but even this one is still not quite right. I mean, it's still even a little bit too bright. So you know something's going on with the flash. Something was not working right. It was not firing very well. There are some theories that say that because it was dropped in water, maybe that's why the flash was not working properly. Who knows? Let's look at this. Does it say? And it said it was running on, yep, 400 ISO, which is correct. That's normally what, and it's running at 15th of a second, which is normal. And the f-stop was at 3.5, looks like. So those are all normal. And yet, it does not look anything like this photo. It's dark. I mean, this is dark. This is not dark. This is what a normal photo should look like. It should be nice and bright, and you can definitely see what's going on, at least in the foreground, but obviously you're not going to see what's in the background. So that's our other issue to contend with, is that this is going to be very difficult to test how that the camera was acting, because we don't know what was going on. Alright, so for our second test, I recharged the battery, and then I wanted to check to see this next interesting thing. So I wanted to see how long it would take if I would put the camera on full auto and then take pictures during dusk. What that would do is that the flash will fire, but it's not firing at a full like night potential, so it's not like throwing out a ton of light, but it's still throwing out a little bit of flash. That's also called fill flash. And so I wanted to see how long the camera would last if I did that just in one night. And what's interesting is I was able to take 245 photos, and then the camera died. So now what's interesting about that is that actually is pretty close to the 210 photos that they were saying that it's possible for this camera to take. So what that tells me is that Canon is expecting their people, whoever buys this camera, to normally put the camera on auto and to have the fill flash on and to be taking pictures with the camera on fill flash. So it's going to be always popping up if it thinks it needs it. Interesting thing that what you would think that the girls would have had it on is a full auto, but that doesn't seem to be the case. They seem to be shutting the flash on and off throughout their vacation. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do for the final test. We have our group of photos here, and what I've decided to do is I'm going to do this in reverse. So I'm going to take the night pictures first, and then I'm going to take the rest of the photos afterwards, and then wherever the camera dies, then we know how many photos the camera can take. So what I had to do is I had to figure out how many photos essentially that they took kind of like every day to average it out. So I was able to figure out they took roughly 19 photos a day. So we go to the calendar and we go back to March, and we go back to March 15th in 2014. You can see the girls' schedule of when they started their trip and how long they were gone. And so the 15th is when they left, and of course April 1st is the day of the alleged hike. And of course several days later then they had the night photos. But what I decided to do is the first day I'm going to take all the night photos, and so I ended up taking actually 101 night photos. And then after that I took 19 photos consecutively every single day until the camera will die. And while I was taking those 19 photos each day, every once in a while I would throw in a couple flash pictures during the day, because the girls did take some flash pictures, and so we needed to throw those in there as well. We don't know exactly how many they did, because like we've shown before, there's a large group of them that we have no idea, but we at least know that they did on occasion use the flash. So I used, I did a couple flash pictures, each day sometimes, and then that was worked in there. So you would have, at least a good representation of being able to use the camera with a flash on occasion. So how many photos was I able to take? Well, I was able to take 548 photos. That's only an extra 104 photos over what the girls took, or what they allegedly took. So let me show you how that worked out on the calendar here. So doing this in reverse, I took 101 photos on the first day, and then after that I took 19 photos every single day until I got to April 4th. Then on April 4th I stopped taking pictures for 3 days, and then after those 3 days I took another 28 pictures, and then the camera died. So that's pretty interesting that I was able to take 548 photos, which is only 104 photos over what the girls allegedly took. Now the only thing that could really skew this, and I didn't really do this at all because there's no way to know, but it also depends on whether they went back and viewed photographs, whether they were flipping through photos and enjoying them, looking back at them, that kind of thing. I have no idea whether they did that or not. I have no idea. They might have, but there's no way to really know. But that would also drain the battery, and that also could explain the difference between the 104 photos. If you're going back and you're looking at photos, that could also drain the battery some as well. So that brings us back to here. So it seems to me that it's pretty likely that you could be able to take 144 photos on one battery charge. That's what it really does seem. I'm very surprised that from what we saw on the instruction book, of the 210 photos, it's way over that, which really surprises me because usually they lie, they make it sound better than it usually is. In this case, it's kind of the opposite, which is kind of surprising. I mean, like I said before, I was able to get quite a few photos just taking normal photos for several months. That's quite a bit. I mean, that's quite a lot of photos. So that's the first part that I wanted to go over. So after doing these tests, there's at least 3 main questions that need to be answered. The first one is, if the girls took all the photos on one battery charge, why do some of the photos have the wrong date and time? Question number 2, if the girls did take the photos, why did they stop taking photos on April 8th when 3 days later the phone still was checked on April 11th? There should have been enough battery power for the girls to be able to take more photos after those 99 photos. Probably not 104, but maybe even just 50. And question number 3, why were the night photos so dark? So after seeing these tests, what do you think? What do you think is possible?